Hi, I'm EXO. This video is intended to give you a starting point if you are new to eXoDOS or DOS games in general. eXoDOS version 6 has 7,633 games in it. That can be a little overwhelming if you aren't sure exactly where to start, if you're not familiar with DOS, if maybe you are, but you only know a couple of games that you enjoyed growing up. And so now you want to find more. So, how do you discover good games in the pack? We have something called the favorite list. Over here in Launchbox, there are two ways to get to it. You can come to view and you can arrange by, and you can come over to favorite, and that will put your favorite ones on top and the other ones on the bottom. It still retains all 7,633 games on the list for you. The way I prefer to do it is come over here and change your filter over to favorite. And here you can pick no or yes or all. We'll go to yes. And you can see we have 360 games on the favorite list. I know that's still a lot, but it's a very small subset of the total list. So the first question I can hear being asked is, how did we determine what the favorite games were? It's a combination. Clearly it's subjective, but it's also based on sales numbers. It's based on popularity. It's based on the games that I grew up playing. And then I also put a call out to my entire staff and other well-respected members of my Discord, and this was like 4 or 5 years ago, and asked them, hey, because for as many games as I've played and as much as I love DOS, I do have blind spots. For example, I never really played 4x4 off-road racing, but as far as those kind of games goes, it is one of the better ones. We're going to scroll through here and see what kind of stuff sticks out to us. Clearly you have the Alone in the Dark series is pretty well known. Archon plays a little bit like chess with special rules. Your pieces actually can fight each other. The Puzzle Gallery at the Carnival is one I grew up playing. These are logic puzzles, but there's a really cool story behind the puzzles, and as you solve all of them, you start unraveling that story. Atlantis is a lot like Myst type games, the first person mysteries. We got, of course, Battle Chess and Bard's Tale. You can see that there's older games and newer games on this list. Below the Root goes all the way back to 1984. It doesn't look that old, though, if you play in the composite mode, where it really does stand out for the time period. You've got text adventures like the Zork series in here. Then you can jump all the way up to my favorite FPS of all time, 1997's Blood. Very influenced by Doom and Duke Nukem 3D, but it has its own feel, it has its really unique weapons, has excellent level design, memorable bad guys. It's an awesome game. Cadaver is one I haven't really played, but it's really neat to look at. It has like an isometric approach to it as you move through the world. We've got a little bit of everything on the list. You got strategy games like the Castle series. You've got action games. You've got adventure games. You've got real-time strategy games. You got platform games like the Keen series. It's a little bit of everything in here. If there's a game that is not on the list that you feel is absolutely stunning and should have been, you can always pop by the Discord and give a reason why. And I'm pretty forgiving. As long as it makes sense, it'll go on here. As long as it's not like your favorite game because it's, all you had. It does have to have some... The idea here is not to create idols out of these games and say, well, these are the best games ever. The idea here is to give someone who is relatively new to the DOS game world a great overview of a little bit of everything. It could be games that were beautiful, games that were amazingly fun, games that were technologically interesting. I mean, Seventh Guest is, to be honest, horrible acting. By today's standards, subpar computer graphics, CG. And the puzzles are fairly unforgiving in parts. But at the time it came out, that game sold CD-ROM drives. People forgave the bad acting because it was acting. You got to see people talking to you. It was so much more realistic than the games that had come before it. As we go down here, we've got the Gateway series. I love text adventures, and Legend put out quite a few amazing ones. Goblins is a really gorgeous game, really brilliant graphics. The CD soundtrack in particular is super unique. I still enjoy listening to it, and when I hear it, it takes me right back to those levels. There's nothing else like it. Harvester is a pretty unique adventure game. You are in a 1950s era town, and everything is wrong. People are weird and sinister, and it definitely feels like everyone is smiles and happiness up front, but there's some really horrid stuff going on underneath it. And it's got a pretty crazy twist ending as well. Speaking of twist endings, if we move over here to Hell, this game was one of the original, like, what if we hired movie actors? It's got Dennis Hopper in it. There's a few other folks I think that did voices for it. But you play an agent in a world where, excuse me, a world where the U.S. government has found that hell is real, and so they have teamed up with hell. And now instead of running a prison system when people commit crimes, they just go to hell and spend time there. And you are an agent for the government that helps find these people. But of course, it wouldn't be that simple. Something has gone wrong, and now other agents are coming for you to send you to hell. And the idea behind the game, it's an adventure game. You talk to people, find items, use them, solve puzzles. But there's a whole conspiracy kind of underlying, really, what is hell? And how is the government using it? Who's in control of this? It sounds weird, but I remember playing it back in the day. I think I played on the 3DO, actually. And at least for what was I, 15, maybe 16? At that age, I remember the twist being pretty cool. I have yet to replay it again, though, so I don't know how well it stands up. I do remember the animation being a little bit janky even then, so it may be worse now. Even High Octane is on the list here. It is a game that Bullfrog put together in like 6 months because of they owed Electronic Arts a game during that time, and Dungeon Keeper wasn't ready yet. For a game that was put together that quickly, actually it might have been 6 weeks, not 6 months. I know it was a very short turnaround. It's actually a pretty good little racing game, though. You got weapons you can pick up, and it's got some Wipeout feel to it, where you're floating and kind of flying above the track. For a company that didn't really make racing games, I'm impressed by how well it works. Jill of the Jungle, what a great side-scroller that was. Of course, we have the King's Quest series. You're going to find a lot of Sierra games on the list. You're going to find a lot of LucasArts games on the list. These were, I mean, apart from the fact that they were amazing adventures, they were just good games in general. Got old Larry there. Lemmings. I mean, you can't have a list of games that were influential from the home computer without having Lemmings on the list. I want to say that was one of the better selling games before Myst came out. MDK, I always forget that it was a DOS game. To me, it came out so late. I mean, it says 97 here. I remember, I think we got it in 98, 99. And so by then, it felt firmly like we were in Windows territory. So it always surprises me that this game is a DOS game, and it runs as well as it does. You got Mortal Kombat's on here. Oddworld is on the list. However, I would not recommend this version of Oddworld. If you have access to like a PlayStation 1 or an emulator for it, I would definitely play the PS1 version. Or if you have a Windows copy and you can get it running. The DOS version has some really big issues with it, including the inability to save your game, because it uses long file names, which DOS does not support. It was clearly an issue of a game being developed for Windows and then backported to DOS, not tested, just released, and we move on. I was not able to find any records of the company coming out and addressing the issue. No one talks about it. But it's not a bug in the game. It was released that way. It's not a bug with the way it's emulated, in other words. Out of This World is a game I still go back and replay every 3 or 4 years. Once you know what to do, you can probably get through it in 15 minutes. But the first time you play through it, you can easily spend days moving through it, trying to figure out what to do. It's a combination of puzzle, it's a combination of action, it's a combination of timing. It makes it very unique. It's a very cinematic game, which was rare at the time. It also has a beautiful soundtrack if you play it with a Roland MT32. Moving on down, Quarantine. It's like a cab driver game. You got to pick people up and take them around, but you're in a city that is very post-apocalyptic. The Quest for Glory series is neat. If you haven't played those, these are adventure games like King's Quest and Space Quest, but there's a lot more RPG elements to them. And you can choose different classes to start with. And when you beat the game and you go to the next game, you can actually import your old character over and continue. And yes, we have that functionality in eXoDOS. When you beat the first game, it will create a special save file for you. And when you start the second game, it'll ask you, hey, do you have a file you want to import? If you click yes, it'll go check your Quest for Glory 1 folder, see the file, show it to you. You hit the button, it takes care of it. It renames it, it imports it, and you start Quest for Glory 2 with your character. Now, that's something not just for that game. Any game that we've identified that lets you import an old save, we have enabled that. It's one of the small things that I think really makes the collection stand out beyond just a collection of games that you can emulate. Retro City Rampage is not that old of a game. Came out in 2015. But they went back and made a DOS version of it, which is pretty freaking cool. Of course, we got Shadow Warrior and Monkey Island in here. The original Civilization. All the sim games. There's so many of them. This is a fun one. A lot of people know Battle Chess, where the units would fight each other. There was actually Star Wars Chess too, where the units are all the Empire and the Rebels, and they're all animated and they fight each other. It's pretty neat to play that one and watch your favorite Star Wars people have battles. The Space Quest series, of course. We've got some Steve Meretzky titles here. The Sorcerer's series. Star Control is a really well-known 4X type game. Those being the massive strategy space games. Dark Forces, TIE Fighter, X-Wing. TIE Fighter is to this day one of my favorite, if not my favorite, flight simulator. There's a great storyline. There's secret missions you can unlock that lead to a secret ending. Really neat to feel like you're actually flying for the Empire. And I will not spoil anything here, but if you start doing secret missions, you get an ending that is just unbelievable in my opinion. Syndicate, a game that I love to hate. I love the idea of the game. I love playing the first 4, maybe 3 missions, and then it just goes to hell in a handbasket because they did not do any Q&A testing on that game before they released it. Toonstruck is a adventure game that had Christopher Lloyd in it. Pretty neat. It's very Roger Rabbit, the idea of a human inside of a cartoon world. Tyrion is one of the best. This and Raptor, 2 of the best in my opinion. DOS top-down shooters, top-down scrolling shooters. Of course, the Ultimate series, which I have never played, but I hear people like it. Warcraft, Wasteland, which was the precursor to Fallout. Of course, we got the Carmen Sandiego series, the Wing Commander series, Wolfenstein, the DOS version of Wipeout, the XCOM series. If you're going to do turn-based strategy, the XCOM series is, in my opinion, probably the funnest of them all. I grew up mainly playing Terror from the Deep, the second game, which is underwater with submarines. Pretty much a reskin with a few new features of UFO Defense, which was the same game, only with UFOs on land. I've never actually played Apocalypse. It didn't get great reviews when it came out. And then finally we have the first Zork game made the favorite list. Now there is a 2 and a 3, and then there's Beyond Zork, which we do have up there. I think there's Zork Zero. There's a lot of them. But the first one is the iconic one. That's the one where if you're going to play an old parser-based text adventure, that's the place to start. But you got to watch out for grooves while you're there. I'll leave it to you to discover what a GRU is. Hopefully this list makes it easier to find a place to start. Once you get into it, if you find a game you really like and you want to find more games like it, of course there's resources online, but I would encourage you to drop by the Discord channel. Let us know that you found a game you loved, what game it was, and we have some very knowledgeable people there that would be more than happy to give you some recommendations on other games that are like it. Thanks for stopping by and watching the video.